It's important to show how buildings can be reused, revitalized, and not to have the first thought be, let's demolish them. Seeing these buildings have life in them after being vacant for so long, it was a real joy.
This project is a really fun project because we have 4 separate buildings, 2 row homes, and then we have this really nice converted tobacco warehouse, and then we had one house that was sort of an outlying property that just made its way in and rounded out this 4-building property.
The heart of downtown is now occupied again. We have City Hall right across the street, and we have the Elmira City Club across another street. We have the Chamber of Commerce right next door. And so all these buildings being occupied are important to the vibrancy of downtown Elmira. The porches on the front of the two main buildings on East Church Street were no longer existing as they had been originally. So it was nice and exciting to think about putting those porches back on the buildings.
This is something that we need to continue to advocate for so that every person of every socioeconomic status can make the same decisions and have access to safe, affordable living.
It's a beautiful set of buildings, and I'm hopeful that people really appreciate and enjoy living here.
You think about New York having over 8 million residents and 20% of them being of Caribbean descent. That's a really, really high number. So I started to first ask myself, but then some local stakeholders, as well as a few elected officials, why isn't there a Little Caribbean in New York? No one knew why, no one knew how, and so I set out to really try to make it happen, and that happened in September of 2017. Little Caribbean is the epicenter of the Caribbean community in the United States, I would say almost in North America. It is the home of the largest concentration of Caribbean Americans. We are the first and only Little Caribbean in the world, and that's located in the neighborhoods of Flatbush, East Flatbush, and Prospect Lefferts Gardens. We center the Caribbean experience year-round. So we do anything from an art exhibition to cultural performances. We have an annual residency now at Governor's Island. We host food and walking tours. We now have this space, which is a permanent year-round space where we have over 30 Caribbean artisans from not only back home, but as well as in the diaspora, and many of them are right from Little Caribbean. So we host a lot of experiences here in store. We do everything we can to really center what we call a Carapolitan experience year-round. We also partner very closely with the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. They have semi-permanent installations that are named after the neighborhood. We don't know where New York City or Brooklyn or Flatbush or Little Caribbean is going to be 50 or 100 years from now, but it's really important to memorialize the contributions and sort of like what was there. I think buildings is definitely one part of it, but it's also about the culture of a place.
You know, you can't build something like this today. I think it's far more economical to go, okay, we can fix it. The renovation project was for the 3rd floor of the Opera Hall, right in the heart of the business district in the village of Avon. So the renovation was to complete the 3rd floor, restore it back to what it was, a performance space. All the town services are located here in the building, and now we've made it more accessible. We've completed a project that we had planned to do for over 10 years. We've completed something that we started even though the administration may have changed over the years. Part of the restoration was preserving the graffiti. We have graffiti that dates back to the late 1800s, from the different performers that performed here, the different traveling shows that performed. So it's kind of cool to look at that and go, geez, that's from 1895. Well, I think the lasting impact is you stabilize the downtown area. This is a building that will be here for many years. It's already been here for over 100 years. So with all of the improvements, all of the repairs, structural as well as mechanical, so you know we have a modern building with the looks of an older building. So it'll be here for a long time after I'm gone.
I think eventually buildings like this become deteriorated to the point that they can't be preserved. They become either physically unable to be reused or economically too expensive to be reused. This building, I think, was close to its tipping point.
You lose something like this, it's safe to say you will not get it back. To be able to take a building that was originally designed as a factory, and it is almost perfectly suited for redevelopment into housing. That was an amazing thing.
Building like this is challenging to develop and construct. It's more challenging than it would have been to just do a demolition and start fresh. There was more to work around, and I think that in itself communicates a level of care to a community that you're worth going through those harder steps to preserve something that's important. And then, of course, the provision of affordable housing. We have 123 units of affordable and supportive housing, which is a benefit to the community and to the individuals who are living here. So it has kind of many levels of impact.
That residents come here and really enjoy the spaces that were preserved and created. And that also includes not only their apartments, but a lot of common space too that we've managed to include in the project, which are lounge areas and lobby areas that have a lot of the historic detailing.
The biggest accomplishment is just knowing the number of people who will live here, not just the initial tenants, but generations of individuals who can live in this building over time.
I'm looking forward and hopeful that there's more of these projects.
When I entered my first Wells barn, I just was taken with the beauty and the architecture, how it felt like a countryside cathedral when I was inside. So John Talcott Wells is from the hamlet of Garbutt, and along the way he acquired the skills to create about 100 of these barns. Out of those 100, fewer than half are still standing. For me, the Gothic arch is just so stunning, and knowing that you truly can't identify a Wells barn unless you go inside and see this patented truss system, that's where my eye goes immediately. And I get a little quickening of the heart, I get a little emotional, and I think it's that emotion that I feel every time I step inside one of these barns that really helped to drive that documentary through the darkest times, through the hardest times, through the pandemic, through the times that we didn't have funding and when we did. And so we felt one of the ways to invite people in to the Wells barns would be to feature them on screen so that people could have access in a way they couldn't before.
They are beautiful giants of a different age, the legacy of a visionary named J.T. Wells, his sons, and family. Roughly 100 of these unique barns were built, steeped in family stories and pride. More than half of those are now gone. But for those still standing, there is within the story of how we came to be.
So the hope is to have people who watch understand that when a barn can no longer be used for agricultural purposes, it doesn't mean that its life has to end or that it has a bleak future. And when their original purpose is gone, that chance to think creatively about what it can become next, that's amazing. And that's gritty and that's powerful.
When I had first gotten here, the concrete was falling off in chunks. Cast iron was splitting apart. It was in very poor condition, and to the point that we had to put barricades so people would not get close to it. Well, one of the key things with this project was that the The lantern where I'm at right now was not original to the building. It was a replacement lantern that was installed around 1920 or so. The original lantern, designed by James Renwick, was a much more unique, almost like a rocket ship type profile. The new lantern that we created here is trying to replicate, or at least give some homage to that. We didn't have any of the original drawings, so we really only had some old photographs, fuzzy photographs to work off of, but a very unique profile to say the least. Working with the craftspeople who are involved with this, whether it be the masons, the metal workers, I mean, all of them were fantastic artisans in their own right working on this, and that I find very satisfying. And being able to put those type of people to work on meaningful projects like this, I think is important, and everybody really took a lot of pride in putting this one together. Preservation, certainly in New York City, as well as the rest of the country, is very important in terms of history and having some aspect of understanding where you came from. You really need to have some sense of proportion and idea of place on how things were, and then certainly that can help inform where we are going as well.
Had this building collapsed, it would have reinforced that perspective to say, you know, I'm giving up, forget about it. And so to see this building, you know, fall into a pile of rubble really would have been a disappointment for the whole community. Now it's a sense of hope and a little optimism within this side of town.
This project is an adaptive reuse of the former Moyer Carriage factory building here on the north side of Syracuse. It is 128 units of affordable and permanent supportive housing here. It's really an anchor on the north side of the city of Syracuse, and really a beacon to a lot of people in Syracuse when we describe what the building is and the house on top.
Everybody in Syracuse knows the building with the house on top. Even if you've never been to this area, you've never gotten off the exit, you still know this building, you still know this complex. So just the visual of seeing this project being done, the restoration, the dedication, the care, and sends a message to the community that your community cares about you and that this community is one to watch, one to grow, one to build.
Approximately 47% of our children within the city of Syracuse live in poverty. And so it's very close, I think, to housing visions in our hearts to make sure that we have quality, safe, affordable housing really as a human right. And so we're very proud of this 128 units, a project making impacts on 128 families, children, and that's why we do what we do.
We can take some of the greatness that we had of our past and package it in a way that's great for today and in our future.
Boarded, vacant buildings send a message to the community, to the neighborhood, and to the children who still live in this neighborhood. And it's a negative message, something's wrong with you, something's wrong with your community.
Bringing a building back to life sometimes feels impossible. To be standing here in this space, to be able to work here, to be able to have the doors open to community, it feels like a dream come true.
We have 10 historic buildings to create housing. We built on 12 lots, new construction to create housing. And then we had really the marvelous opportunity to purchase what was the former United Methodist Church here in the city of Newburgh with a sidecar school building. Repurpose it as High Point, partner with Link, and hopefully, do some really great things here for the community.
Through our training program for Opportunity Youth between 16 and 24, they're able to learn construction skills, have access to architects and developers and organizations like REPCO that are prioritizing making sure that students and families like theirs are not displaced. And so having this training hub and workforce development campus really allows us to prioritize the importance of making sure that people have, high-paying jobs and trades and become entrepreneurs and are able to have sustainable long-term place here in the community that they love. It's more than just affordable housing. It really impacts an entire family when you can have safe, reliable, affordable homes.
It's thrilling to experience the building as it is so significant in terms of Art Deco design.
Historic preservation really is something beautiful. There really is something to look for purpose.
When we were asked by the diocese to come here 15 years ago, we were asked to come here because the bell tower leaked. No one said anything about go and look at this Art Deco masterpiece. Through that process, we began to understand the significance and the high quality of design and detailing that went into the building. So that was a discovery. We didn't expect it. It's important to preserve churches like this one because this is a community building. It's been here for 90 years. The fact that the church was restored and the fact that it was preserved and it was made new tells the community that the church is vibrant, it's active, it calls out to the residents who are here and new residents that there is this church available to them.
I think it's important to preserve churches because you continue the story, you continue to have more of these family history.
We're very proud to have had the opportunity to work on the building to help preserve it.
As you walked up the street, on what you saw was a dilapidated paint falling off the building, boarded up, no windows. You know, the eyes of this building were closed. Alexander Patterson, who built the house in 1851, he owned a mineral spring in Saratoga, which is such an important part of our history. But also, it later became a Jewish boarding house, which is symbolic of the history of this neighborhood known as the Gut. Well, this property actually has been on the Foundation's endangered list since 1998. The prior owners have claimed that they originally were going to rehabilitate the buildings, but ultimately it seemed as though that they were intent on letting them fall into disrepair to the point where they could be demolished and the site could be redeveloped. We didn't want to see an owner who was actively engaging in demolition by neglect be successful. We're a small organization. We need the support of everyone to be able to do it. If it weren't for the donors, the foundations, the contractors, the volunteers who gave their time and their expertise, we could have never gotten this project to the point that we got it to. It's critical for a project like this to have that community buy-in. Whatever net proceeds that we make from the sale of this building will go into a future preservation project that will benefit the community.